2026 meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee. This meeting is being held virtually in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025. Everybody check your equipment, make sure it's working properly and that your mics are muted when you're not speaking. This meeting is being recorded by Stoughton Media Access and by the building committee. I think, Eric, you're doing that, right?
Yep. I need to record here, but I do see Smack online.
Yep.
We are recording now.
Excellent. First order of business is to call the roll. Dr. Baeta? I saw
Aye.
Joe B. Yeah, great. Joseph Buckley,
Yep.
Fran Bertnetti, Tom Coulter, Steve Cavey, Jillian DeStefano,
Here.
Diane Dolan,
Here.
Jake Dorr,
Aye.
Leo Fay,
Yep.
Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Greg Horsfall,
Here.
Lynn Jordan, Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
Juliet Miller,
Here.
Katie Monahan,
Here.
Emery Raymond, TJ Recupero is here, Dennis Rigo,
Here.
Mark Tisdale, Joel Walk, and Pat Yanakowski. Wouldn't be surprised if Pat shows up. Her attendance has been perfect. All right, great. First order of business is public comment period. This is the period of the meeting where we invite members of the public to make comments or address the committee with any concerns, questions, or otherwise. Under the open meeting law, it's not something that we can actively deliberate at this meeting, but if it's a matter of interest, we may put it on a future agenda. And as always, we invite people to address the committee throughout the project and from the beginning. If you have any questions, we ask that you limit them to 2 minutes. Hit the raise hand button at the top of your screen, and Eric Rubin will recognize you in turn. Keep your mic muted until then. Does anybody have any public comments or questions? I'll do 3 calls. Anybody? Any public comments at all? And last call. Hearing nobody, we'll move on to item 3, acceptance of the minutes of, I had the date here, February
18th, I think.
18th. Eric sent those out. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Does anybody have any changes or corrections? And if not, is there a motion to accept the minutes of February 18th, 2026?
So moved. Motion to accept the minutes.
I didn't get who moved, but there was a motion.
Melissa.
It was
Melissa,
me.
is there a
And
second?
Someone else did too.
Second.
Great. Excuse me. I have to call a roll again. Dr. Baeta,
Abstain.
Joseph Buckley.
Aye.
Fran Bertnetti, Tom Coulter, Steve Cavey, Jillian DeStefano,
Aye.
Diane Dolan,
Aye.
Jake Dorr,
Aye.
Leo Fay,
Abstain.
Sandra Gropey,
Abstain.
Greg Horsfall,
Abstain.
Lynn Jordan,
Aye.
Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
Juliet Miller,
Aye.
Katie Monahan,
Abstain.
Emery Raymond, TJ Recupero votes aye, Dennis Rigo,
Aye.
Mark Tisdale, Joel Walk, and Pat Yanakowski. That's a vote.
I got, I think I missed the first abstain. I got Leo, Sandra, Katie, and Craig.
and add Joe B to that. And
Joe B.
it should be 5 abstentions, 9 yeses.
Thank you.
Someone just came in. I didn't see who.
Yeah, Pat just came in.
Oh, Pat. Pat, you're here? I'll come back to that. Next order of business, vendor invoice package. The February invoice package, Eric sent it out. Financial subcommittee reviewed it. Joe Wilkes not here. Joe Buckley, you were there, I understand. Do you want to take this? If not, I can.
Yes, I was there for Joel Woke. So Fran Brunelli, Anne Marie Raymond, Joel Woke, myself, and Eric Rubin from Vertex met on yesterday, March 10th, 2026, for a detailed review of the invoices. These invoices included Vertex invoice number OPM 119-40. It is for total of $51,822.50, which includes $46,625.00 for their base contract and $5,197.50 for other administrative costs. The package also included DRA invoices, invoice number 25, in the amount of $429,520.00 for their base contract, and under other reimbursables, $140.89. I believe that was for some printing, for a total of $429,660.89. WT Rich invoice number PCAPP05, pre-construction services for the amount of $21,900.00. Invoices from GPI, invoice number 0426554, for permitting in the amount of $8,941.11, and another invoice 0428464 in the amount of $3,365.71. For both of those invoices are for peer review and permitting. So after the review, we found them to be reasonable and in accordance with the corresponding contract documents and contract requirements. Therefore, I move that the building committee recommend approval of the invoices. In addition, 2 attendees were there from the town of Stoughton, Craig Horsfeld and Heidi Crutchfran, who helped review the permitting invoices from GPI.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, TJ, I have one. Can we define permitting, please?
Yeah, for the GPI invoices.
Yeah.
Yes, so those were for the peer reviews that we're doing for the Conservation Commission and Planning Board. So traffic and stormwater were required by Planning Board initially, and then there was an amendment to their contract to add an environmental peer review at the request of the Conservation Commission.
So both conservation, a public entity, and planning board, another public entity, are charging a public project, correct?
The GPI is the third party.
Right. They are forcing a building project to be charged to the taxpayers. That's at the end of the day, that's what both of those public health committees are doing. I'm going to be voting no, and I will always vote no. This is taxpayers' money being utilized by 2 standing committees of the town, and they're charging the taxpayers for this work. Ridiculous. I voted no my entire career on this. This is taxpayers' money and 2 elected appointed committees, planning board and conservation are requiring the building project to spend more money than it needs to. It's absurd. Thank you. You know how I stand.
Thanks, Joe. I have a question.
Joe,
Does anybody else have a?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure,
Um,
Diane.
Joe, instead of voting no, can we just take those amounts off the bill and vote those down and just vote the other total? Or do we have to write, or does Eric have to come up with a new bill?
I would say before that, we should probably talk about this maybe a little bit more. And I see Tim's hand up. Tim, if you want to take this from me, feel free. But this is pretty typical for
Yeah.
a building project. I'm not to take away from the public, the town building itself. It is in line with this type of project. It is pretty standard to have these peer reviews done, and the funds are to pay the third party engineer to do their work. It is an independent company. This isn't the town that we are paying. It is their hired peer reviewer, just if that clears up any confusion.
Yeah, so for the record, the planning board, town taxpayers appointed by the select board, conservation, same thing, took a vote to build the building project for a third party. I know this happens in every community, and anytime I sit on the building committee, I stand alone by myself. I'm not asking not to pay the bill. I just think that charging the taxpayers on a project, a third party, because they're asking for a third party review because they don't like something, whatever that something may be, is absurd.
Understood.
Tim, do you have anything to add?
Well, I was just gonna, Eric did actually say what I was gonna say, which is,
Right.
Can you hear me? As opposed to, say, a building permit fee, which is charging the project for something that the town gets revenue for. This is actually expense they incur and, obviously wouldn't budget, and it's pretty typical. And it's not something they would ever budget in their, yearly budget for the planning board or Concom. So we certainly don't view this the same as like paying a building permit fee where essentially, it's revenue to the town. And this is an actual expense. Superintendent Valletta, I don't want to, like, it's your call how you want to vote, but it is a distinction between those two kinds of expenses.
Right, I don't disagree. I guess my comment back would be that both of those appointed committees of the town, who have decided to add a third-party request of a review based on something, right? They're asking us a detailed question for a third-party review on something. Fano Drive is what I hear. Why don't we have access to Sumner?
Well, just
You know.
clarifying, this is actually around stormwater review, probably as much as anything, and
Okay.
stormwater management. And they normally, again, I don't want to, I know your point on this, but I'm just saying this is very typical. Every project we work on, the planning board and the Concom have a peer review because they don't, they feel technically they need that. And it's not this isn't really about Fano Drive at all, just to clarify. This is really about stormwater management, making sure that our traffic, study was adequate, things like that. It's not really around anything to do with Fano Drive.
It's basically an acknowledgement that it's kind of technically over their heads, and
Basically.
they want to treat this project the same way they treat a large project from a developer or something, and say, we need to have a professional, outsider review these kind of calculations and wetland strategies and so forth. So it's not unusual in that sense too, I guess.
I see a few hands up, but can I just add in before, because I started to speak earlier. It's not that I'm jumping the line, but the engineering department, they do in-house review for some projects. Larger projects, they always send out for review. And I will say, not to stroke Craig while I see him here, but he has spent dozens, if not, I don't want to quantify the hours that he put in review anyway, in addition to sending it out for outside peer review. So, the amount of time the amount of money that we're paying an outside peer reviewer is saving people like Craig and everybody in the engineering department and Concom office from the time that they'd be spending reviewing this project anyway. And they do it in addition to their regular work, just the same. So, but anyway, I'll take, if I call you out of order, I'm just going to call people. Oh, wait, there's a number. Melissa Lynch, you were next.
I just want to know if this type of request was done for the high school, and if so, what was the specific request for, and how did the building committee react then to this specific request?
We
That's
paid
just
a
a
peer
barometer.
review. We paid an outside peer reviewer on the high school project. I'm near certain. I don't remember who it was. I want to say Tom, guy from Norwood. But I'm near certain we did on that project. Maybe Tim or Carl remembers it better than I do.
I mean, I don't remember specifically, but it would be unusual not to. So, and that job was
Right.
complex enough to, to require one. So I would say we definitely did. And I do want to be clear, like the engineering department didn't charge us anything for the review that Craig and the water department did or any of that. This came from the planner at the direction of the planning board, which again, as I said, we were very fully, and we budgeted for it too. I do want to, like, we have budgeted for this amount in our budget. It's pretty common, pretty typical, and I would just want to be clear, it's different than being charged a building permit fee, which will be rejected by the MSBA, the building permit fee.
Leo, you were up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that, I understand where Joe is coming from, what he's saying, but if this contractor has already done the work to satisfy the request of the boards, then it's not fair to tell that contractor they can't get paid for their time.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
mean, we should take that up with the board afterwards, that maybe they should consider it going forward, but these folks have already done the work.
Jake, do you have a? Oh, I'm sorry, Craig, you were up next.
Thanks, DJ. Yeah, I'd just like to say that, I do a lot of the planning board reviews for any site plan that comes before the town. We handle most of them in-house from the engineering department. We do, stormwater reviews, basic environmental reviews and so forth. However, when a project does get large like this one has a lot of complications with the stream crossing, environmental issues. We have a riverfront area. We have access on a state highway, so Mass DOT is involved. And we have a large trip generator in a site where there is none presently. So a lot of those things are different from what was existing at the site for the high school, right? We had the existing school was there, all the infrastructure was there, there were no wetlands around, so forth. So a little bit of a different animal here. And I think it's totally prudent to send it out for a third-party review, specifically for items like traffic and these large stormwater systems that are proposed here, as well as the extensive environmental issues present on the site. So.
Thanks, Craig. Jake, did you have something?
No, I'm all set. I think everyone covered it. I appreciate it.
All right. I have a question, not a comment. Joe Baeta first.
I just want to thank Craig for the details that he just noted. My issue is just the process. It's not paying the third party. It's the process that I have a real problem with. I always have. So I know that our engineering department is some of the best people around. So I hope you don't take it as enough offense that I'm questioning it. It has nothing to do with our engineering department's ability to do the work or anything else. It's the process that I have a problem with.
Thanks, Joe. My only question, Tim, is didn't we pay this? Isn't this a reimbursement to Vertex for what's been paid? Or is this-
I'm not sure whether this one was through Vertex or indirectly with the town.
This, you're talking about
Directly with the
these two-
town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these ones are directly with
Yeah.
the town.
This is a town invoice. You know,
Mhm.
an invoice to the town, not, sometimes we run things through Vertex for ease of, but these firms were already on retainer by the town, so there wasn't a procurement thing that would require it to run through Vertex.
No, maybe I'm the one confused here. Did we pay a 53G deposit for these that's being drawn down on?
No, no, I don't think we did, and Eric, I don't think we paid any deposit.
I don't think we paid a deposit. We did bring forth the proposals. So we actually have the contract and there was one amendment that was the stormwater review. So we have we do have a line item on our budget currently that covers, I think that their total contract, we are billing against a number. It's like 32,000 or something.
That's the contract number.
That's the amount. Yeah, that's the approved.
Purchase order.
Yeah.
I was just curious. It'd all get fleshed out in the end anyway, so. All right, there was a motion made and seconded. Sandra, do you have something?
I just have a really dumb question. I've been far removed for a while. With the fire, and maybe it's more for Craig, I'm not sure. With the fire station, was that also outsourced? Like, is this normal with all big projects in Stoughton to go do a third party?
Yeah, I believe that we did send out the fire station for third-party review for stormwater. But it is typical, depending on the size of the project. So we have capacity to do it in-house, and we always try to do so when we can.
Yeah.
And for instance, on this project, I have prepared a technical review letter that's gone into the record as a part of the site plan review process. And Jim Conlon from the Conservation Commission has also prepared a review letter as well. That goes, in addition to these third-party reviews.
Understood. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jake. Did you have anything? Is that an old hand?
I think it might be an old hand.
Okay, great. Is there anybody else has comments or questions? If not, I'm going to call for a vote. When you hear your name, please state aye or nay or abstain. Dr. Baeta,
No.
Joseph Buckley,
Aye.
Fran Brugnetti, Tom Coulter, Steve Cavey, Jillian DeStefano,
Aye.
Diane Dolan,
Aye.
Jake Dorr. I'll come back to Jake. Leo Fay,
Aye.
Sandra Gropey,
No.
Rick Horsfall,
Aye.
Ben Jordan,
Aye.
Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
Juliet Miller,
Aye.
Katie Monahan,
Aye.
Anne Marie Raymond, TJ Recupero votes aye. Dennis Rego,
Aye.
Tisdale, Joe Wolf, and Pat Yanukovsky. I saw Pat come in. Maybe I was mistaken.
I got a
Right.
note that she was having trouble getting logged in.
Okay.
1120 TJ.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
TJ, will there be anything else coming up like this that's part of another committee of the town?
Well, there will be additional peer review bills for this, I'm sure.
There will be.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, if I could just chime in on that. So we're going through the process now, Diane. So there's been at least one review letter for each board so far. Typically, we'll get a response to the comments from the designers, which has already happened. And then beyond that, there's usually another volley back and forth. So this is an effort to get the plans polished up as best they can before issuing permits.
Thank you.
Welcome.
great. Thank you. I should say also, we put you on a pretty rigid timetable too, to stick to our MSBA schedule. But Tim, did you have anything else on this?
Well, the only, just to Diane's comment question, we will have a peer review for structural, which is submitted with the permit. That's an MSBA requirement. That's by an independent and nothing to do with the town requirements. And then likely, but we haven't had this conversation, the fire department's going to have some, we haven't, I don't believe we've had the conversation yet, but they often would like a peer review of the fire alarm and fire detection system. Sprinklers too.
Joe, did you have anything further on this? Dr.
No,
Maeda?
I've already said too. I've already said
Okay.
too much. Thank you.
Okay, I thought I saw your hand up. Great.
Tim, isn't a structural peer review or building code requirement?
I think that's changed now, Joe. I think now it's just the MSBA wants it submitted.
Oh, okay.
The building code, the newer building code, I don't think requires a peer review technically. Although Carl might opine on that.
It used to though, didn't it?
They did, yeah. That's why
Okay.
it's kind of hung in there.
It is a requirement for certain size projects, certain occupancies. Yeah.
Would this project, obviously this project requires it.
Yes.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing further, we're on item 5, project and MSBA updates. Eric?
Thank you, TJ. So I'll use the dashboard to walk us through here, but firstly, MSBA updates. We submitted our 60% construction documents at the beginning of February. The MSBA in turn, they go and they review the comments for they review the submittal for every one of these major submissions, and they produce comments that they, in this case, sent back to us 2 weeks ago. We just sent those responses to their comments back today, and DRA and the design team are working on the next round of these construction documents. So what we call the 90% construction documents they will go out to the estimators for the next round of estimates on March 18th. And the next MSBA submission, I think we're targeting April 23rd or around then. So that's where we are with the MSBA. We received the fully executed project funding agreement. We received the project funding agreement about a month ago. We signed and sent it back to them. They executed it. So that was actually just last week. And then on Monday, they changed things in their portal so that we could actually start entering in the next round of invoices, update the budget. We have to do a few transfers to line things up with the current contract amounts. And then we can go and enter in all of the invoices from feasibility study to now. So we're hoping in the next few months we start receiving reimbursements again. So that's good news. Moving through the rest of the schedule, but I guess I'll stop. Does anybody have any questions about the MSBA? Where we stand? Hearing none.
Oh, just,
Okay.
yeah, 60% comments were due today back to the MSBA, so that would close out the 60% CD review.
Thanks, Brian. So coming up in the next month, we have, as I mentioned, the 90% set go to the estimators. Tentatively, we have Conservation Commission hearing number 2 scheduled for March 19th. I mean, we are on for that, so we're hoping that we can close out all of their concerns. And I'll let DRA speak to some more permitting updates after I walk through this, but that's on the 19th. On the 25th, we will release the subcontractor request for qualifications. So that is something that we prepare as we go out to bid with the full package. In June, we have to pre-qualify, what we call pre-qualify all of the contractors. And some of you that were involved in the high school probably remember this. We put together a pre-qual committee, which is actually appointed by TJ. In this case, it'll be Angel from DRA, Alex from WT Rich, myself from Vertex, and it's going to be Joe Buckley from the committee. So that is a official subcommittee that is formed, and all meetings of that subcommittee are posted public meetings. So our first meeting will probably be later next week, and those are, everyone is welcome to join. It's really it's part of the procedure. We have to formalize this request for qualifications. We define how we score these contractors against each other. They have to meet a certain amount, they have to be qualified to work on the project. Typically, it's very few will actually not qualify for the job, and you don't want to disqualify too many, because the more bidding subcontractors you have, the more competitive the bids are, so you get better pricing. The purpose is so that you don't get any contractors that are not qualified to do the job. So this exercise kind of helps us make sure that we have a good pool of strong candidates to complete the work. So that'll be coming up. We will send that out on the 25th, as I mentioned, and then bids are due back on the 15th of April, I believe. So it's kind of a fast-moving process over the next couple months. But we'll be moving through it. Leo, you got a question?
Eric, is there a financial look into these subcontractors who are bidding?
Yes, it's a comprehensive review. So we go over management, we go over past projects. They have to have similar projects. They have to be properly sized, and they do have to have strong financials. So it's really, it is a comprehensive review, and they have to meet a minimum in addition to a minimum amount of points overall. They have to satisfy each one of the categories individually. So
Okay, great. I just know over the last few years, there's been several companies that had gone out, and now they're reorganized and coming back under a different name, so.
Understood. Typically, a new contractor would not be able to qualify on a project of this size, like, right into a school project, if they don't have similar work to, in this case, other educational facilities. We'll have to define it a little bit more specifically in the request for qualifications, but they would need similar project experience to be able to bid on this project. Any other questions on pre-qual? Moving forward, on March 26th, that is the next planning board hearing. So planning board site plan review hearing. So this is required for us to start work, and closing out that hearing is dependent on the Conservation Commission hearing closing up before that. So there is an order of operations there, and as I mentioned, I'll kick it off to DRA to give any updates there if there are any. Joe, you got a question?
I guess I think you just said you're going to kick it off to DRA, but I guess my questions is, what are the issues at the Conservation Committee and the Planning Board, just for the board, just for this working committee to know what those issues are, if there are any?
Sure. Carl, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. There were a few issues. both from the previous hearing and from the comments that came through in the peer review. Some had to do with the basic wetland flagging boundaries. The site was flagged a couple of years ago, and when the agent and maybe the peer reviewer as well reviewed, there were a few flags they questioned. And so we had that reflagged and revisited by our wetland scientist. I think that's going to be in agreement now. The impact on the stream is another issue that's come up. There's a culvert now that runs under Fano Drive that connects. It kind of runs parallel to the culvert runs parallel to Park Street. And the scope of our work was to replace that, partly because it's deteriorated, partly because it's a little bit functionally deficient. It gets overwhelmed. It's a 60-inch culvert, and sometimes the water level is all the way up to the top. And so it's actually going to be replaced in kind, or not in kind, but in with a different kind of structure, a box culvert. And when we get through, it's going to look more like a bridge, actually, that with a stream running under it, that animals could actually pass under as well as the water. That sort of was an issue that was noted both by the agent, by the committee, by the peer reviewer, that we've addressed in our updates. And there were some other stormwater comments on the type of infiltration systems. Those have been responded to and updated and revised. So we believe we've responded to all the comments. We've submitted that just recently for the hearing that's coming up next week on the 19th. But those are the sort of nature of the issues.
Thank you.
Anybody else questions? Eric, back to you.
Thank you. So, yeah, so contingent on those two hearings closing out, our early trade package enabling work will begin targeting April 6th. So should all those hearings close, that's when we're looking to mobilize. And I'm gonna let Alex speak to some of that work after I run through the rest of this schedule here. Look ahead, I have a couple items on the next couple of pages. So, this is more of a summary for work that was done in the previous month up top. I think I touched on most of these. We did begin our mass timber framing design assist meetings about 3 weeks ago. And that's another item I'll let WT Rich speak to that. And we talked about prequal. So our upcoming work plan here, tonight's meeting on the 18th, the construction documents to the estimators. We talked about the hearings in April after the site enabling should begin. Our next SBC meeting, if we follow the same cadence, would be on April 8th. Subcontractor qualifications are due on the 15th, and we will have some pre-qual meetings sprinkled throughout. So as I mentioned, the first one probably going to be next Thursday or Friday. I'll speak with the rest of the committee and make sure that we have a date and time that works for everyone. And then we'll have a couple more in April. So looking ahead, we will have continued development of the next design package, continued meeting with the design assist framing contractor that was awarded last month, and beginning, I guess, hopefully soon we'll be starting up on site in April. So that's pretty much where we're at. You guys have any questions on the upcoming work? And Alex, do you want to give a quick summary?
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, Eric, you touched on most of this already. Over the past month, the design assist has really taken shape, or I should say started. That process, which is important to getting the next level of detail with the glulam structure as it relates to the steel. There's a component of steel and glulam integration called sort of a hybrid structure that we need those guys to kind of sync up on. So the idea is by the end of March, we have a deliverable that can be included within the early bid package 2 steel bid to make sure that they're kind of apples to apples in their design. So that process is ongoing. And then to Eric's point, we're a few weeks away from hopefully mobilizing. We have a crew going out there tomorrow, a small crew, to start some survey and layout and get our controls set up on site. And then pending Concom and planning board reviews, the idea would be to start mobilization, I think that first week of April, that first full week of April. So it's really coming up quick. I feel like we were just in front of you introducing ourselves weeks ago at this point. So yeah, we're excited, anxious and excited is what I tell people. So that's kind of where we're at. Any questions, comments? Happy to answer them.
Yeah, nothing.
I got a thumbs up. I like it. Better than a thumbs down. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Is that it for project and MSBA updates?
I believe so.
If not, we're into design and permitting updates. Carl, I would assume.
Okay. Well, we already started. I guess maybe I'll just keep going on the permitting updates since they are connected, as Eric mentioned, that after the conservation meeting next week, then the following week is the planning board, where, you know, they too are concerned with stormwater design and calculations. So again, the same responses and updates that we've had, we hope satisfy them in that regard. The planning board's also scope includes, you know, general site plan review of the parking lot, parking spaces. We had a little give and take on the size of parking spaces. We had hoped to keep them small to keep the amount of pavement down to a more traditional 9x18 striped parking space with a 24-foot drive aisle, but Stoughton standard that the planning board would like to keep us to is 9x19. So it's one more foot of pavement for each parking space throughout the site. Fortunately, we're still under the threshold for overall coverage of pavement, but we did update the plans to pick up that adjustment and the calculations for drainage. Believe it or not, even that 1 foot does matter. They also, as was mentioned, you know, had the third-party reviewer look at the traffic too, and we've responded to their comments. Those have been compiled again and gone back, and those are comments independent of the mass, you know, DOT comments about the traffic light. These are more just about you know, overall traffic flow in general, and how many cars can queue, for instance, at pickup time and things like that, and how were the calculations done, you know, those kind of comments that we've responded to. So again, hopefully the planning board issues are resolved at the 26th. We should mention the Conservation Commission process, as many of you may know, is they do hold a public hearing for projects like this. They close the public hearing, then they have one more step of writing an order of conditions, which, you know, generally affect just sort of the operations on the site, both during construction and beyond. Talk about, you know, sequence of things. You have to put down erosion control first before you do anything else. You know, they'll speak to what happens in a rainstorm if there's a washout, or, you know, how is the site maintained when there's snow, and, you know, things like that are addressed in the standard order of conditions from conservation. So they have, I believe it's like 10 days after they close the hearing to write that order of conditions. And we would include that and pass it on, obviously, to the contractors and as well as to the owner. So that is kind of in the schedule as well, built into the schedule, that we plan on getting that in a timely fashion so that W.T. Rich can get out there and start installing that erosion control and then begin clearing the site and so forth. And on the other issue of planning, or permitting rather, is the, you know, Department of Transportation, where we did have that meeting. We reported on, I think last time, that, you know, right now the projections on traffic and hours of use and so forth do not qualify in the state standards for a full traffic signal there at the intersection of Park Street with DeStefano Way, that we all would like to see, but we haven't given up on it yet. We're expanding our traffic study to include the projection that what would be the case, what would be the calculations and numbers and so forth if DeStefano Way became a public street all the way through to Sumner. Would that change, particularly would it change the hours of traffic impact? Because that's one of the shortcomings right now, is that obviously with the school project, there are traffic impacts in the morning, you know, drop-off time and the afternoon pickup time. But in the middle of the day, the traffic impacts are of a lesser degree that don't cross that threshold, meet their so-called criteria to warrant a traffic signal. But maybe if it were a public road, our traffic engineers are going to look at it and do their best guesses to estimates to projected traffic's flow and calculations at that time, and see if we can re-meet with Department of Transportation with updated numbers. That would involve the actual construction of DeStefano Way as a public road for that to satisfy the state. Not that we have to take it on as part of this project necessarily, but the state would require that it be built in order to justify the signal at some point in time. So there's also the alternative traffic responses of different kinds of crosswalk signs. You've probably seen some of these more recently, some of which are flashing, some of which are, you know, actually have a red light to them when you activate the crossing to stop traffic and so forth. So we're also investigating those alternative traffic control devices too, as a fallback, you might say. But the design, the physical design of the intersection is not greatly impacted by whether there's a signal or not in terms of the turning radiuses and where the curves are. We will have a left turn lane for northbound traffic on Park Street to make a left turn into the site. We will have a left turn lane out of the school driveway to make a left turn onto Park Street. So, and those will remain, the design, physically design remains regardless of whether we have a traffic signal now. And we will make the provisions too to, you know, allow for, even if we don't get the agreement to install one at this time, we'll still make the provisions both spatially and infrastructure wise to allow for a signal to be installed in the future. And there will be a crosswalk in any event there across with the appropriate curb cuts and striping and signals and signage and so forth. So that's the other, I guess, permitting activity that's going on. And I see Jake, you have your hand up. Would you like to, you have a question?
Yeah, Carl, I know we talked about this a lot last time. I just have like two quick follow-ups because I mean, I definitely expressed to you my concern last time with the signal, and I know it's not like a Carl decision, so it's not feedback for you specifically. I know you want a signal there, but I guess, can you just like talk a little more about how that, like, I mean, to your knowledge, like how that process is done? Because I just know now, even with like the current South population of kids, that would be dangerous, and doubling that feels wild to me without having some kind of traffic signal there. I guess so. Like, what would that process look like? And is that taken into account that the population on that street would essentially double for kids? And that's the first thing. And then second, sorry. Oh, the second thing I think is just like a comment more for like the town side of this and the school side of this. Like, if we were to have to get like a police detail or something like that to help facilitate, like, I don't know, maybe Dennis can chime in on this too. Like, taking a left turn out of that street right now during arrival or dismissal feels exceptionally dangerous, just in my opinion. I'm just an administrator at a school, but that feels exceptionally dangerous to me. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I know we've talked about it a bunch of different times, but I feel like it's worth repeating. So thank you, Carl. I appreciate it.
Sure. Maybe Craig might want to respond to some of those points. I see you got your hand raised, Craig.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jake, for those comments. I couldn't agree with you more. That, you know, pulling out onto Park Street, particularly with a high volume of parents and buses, you know, bringing kids to school or leaving the facilities, it's going to be a risky endeavor without a signal there. In my mind, I'd love to see that 100%. Our issue is that Park Street is a state-controlled highway layout, and what they say goes on that roadway. You know, the criteria that we're missing here is it's called an 8-hour warrant. So at those peak times, we have that volume of traffic there, but we don't sustain it for 8 hours. And therefore you'll have a really intermittent time when you would actually need a signal, right? So it becomes kind of tricky for people during the day, where they'd be hitting a red light and there's no one there, or so forth. The timing could be adjusted so that it's actuated, but they really don't like to install them when you don't meet that 8-hour criteria, that 8-hour warrant. And what we're re-examining is if Fano Drive or DeStefano Way is an actual connection from Park Street to Sumner, would that volume of traffic in the future be enough to sustain it for 8 hours? And it might be, because people will be using it as cut through. So that's what they're
Craig,
looking at now.
I really appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Like, in your opinion, does Ash currently, like, I know Ash is the cut through. So like currently where South is, like, it is busy during the day, but it's also a smaller street. So like, I would assume that would increase the traffic, right? If it was available to cut between those two major roadways.
If Ash was available?
No. Like, if you were to open up, because I know Ash currently now is very busy during the day. So if you were to open it up, it would even be more of a straight path actually than Ash kind of currently is.
It would be more tempting for people to cut through, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Did that answer your questions, Jake, or is there something else? Obviously, for pedestrians, like we said, there will be a crosswalk, and we'll do, you know, the best we can with signage and crossing the pedestrian devices. It's the left turns by cars and slow moving buses pulling out. Those are the ones we really are concerned about. And there may well be the need for a policeman during certain times to help traffic there. Other questions are popping up too. Melissa?
A little bit to piggyback off of Jake, and I understand the situation here with the 8-hour warrant. I cross that street when there is no traffic often to walk, and people do not stop. They don't stop. They don't acquiesce. It's a long time standing, and that's not even at peak hours. So, and I also know that shortly after Haynes Road on that bend, it goes right from 20 to 40. It's right even before William Kelly, right on the right, because I've paid attention since the last meeting. So I don't know if there's any other thing from a town perspective that we can push, or a legislative perspective, or somewhere else, or some other avenue that we need to start pushing now to help advocate for this, because it is very, very dangerous. This road, that turn, and I don't know that anyone's going to be able to get out of there, and I don't know how much they're going to acquiesce to traffic coming to and fro on peak hours. They don't even do it on non-peak hours. So I'll let that rest there. That corridor is busy, but I understand the criterias. I just think that I'd be remiss not to say that early and often and every single time I have an opportunity.
Thanks, Melissa. It's good to have a butter in on the building committee. I see Diane and Leo too. First, Diane.
Okay, did I unmute myself? I did. I'm going to piggyback both off of Jake and Melissa, because that was my concern too. Although we do have the Wilkins School, I'm sorry, I'll always call it the West, the Wilkins School, that you cannot take a left-hand turn out of their parking lot. They just go right. I know that would be a huge inconvenience for everybody to come out of that street and take a right, and going up Park Street probably make Ash Street very busy again. But I think you're right, Jake. The people coming up Ash, which is not really a straightaway to come up, would go further and go up either Fano or whatever we're going to call that drive, especially if there was a set of lights at the end of it that they could get out onto Park Street easier. Thanks.
Thanks, Diane. Leo?
Yep. I was just curious. I understand that the state controls the intersection and the light, but are we still able to put a school zone sign out there that the speed limit changes to 20 miles per hour?
I should have mentioned that. That is included in our sort of menu of options here in terms of, trying to optimize the safety there of that intersection. Yes, we can, and they have flashing school, as well as just ordinary, and it can at least locally control the speed limit too. It can say school zone 20 miles an hour when flashing, something like that. That's what we're investigating as one of the alternatives.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, if we can get the town to make the busing more affordable, we want to have the parents driving as many cars to get the kids to school and put more of them on a bus and have one vehicle instead of 40. So.
Joe Baeta?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So, one, I won't be around, but I'll still hopefully reside in town. I think a couple of things. I think early on, we should really work with the police chief. There might be a cost to the school department's budget, but early on, when that building opens up, we probably want to take a look at some type of support from the police department, even if it's a 4-hour minimum in the morning, a 4-hour in the afternoon, which would be very, very costly. But we have to set the stage for success coming off of having a building that's off of Park Street. That's number one. Number two, we don't know what the redistricting looks like as it pertains to transportation. We know that the heat zones are in two significant locations from 2 or 3 years ago now, which is Deep South Stoughton, right? Deep South, as I call it, and that Wilkins area, Wilkins going towards the Dar area. So depending on what the redistricting committee does, the impact on traffic going left could be significant, but it could also be not as much as we potentially think. And so that's one. Two, at minimum, it's going to require a crossing guard, because a crossing guard is typically allowed to be at a school for the purposes of releasing buses, not cars, but buses, and students crossing the street, of which on Park Street, currently the sidewalk is on the other side of the street.
Mhm. Mhm.
Which would then mean that on Ash Street, if you're crossing over again as a walker, there already is a crossing guard there. So the issue for the school department long term will be cost, right? It won't be that we can't do something. It's just how do you afford it? Especially if we have traffic that has to go left. If it's buses that are going left, to Leo's comment, you know, there's no fee. Let's say you could institute a no fee K-5 system if you wanted to, actually K-6. But per law, you could do that because that's the choice of the school committee versus 7 to 12, where you don't even have to transport students by law. You just do it because it's a best practice. So depending on, long story short, depending on what the redistricting committee's recommendations to the school committee are, which will be numerous, probably more than one option, typically it's 2 or 3, that committee's review and numbers and so on and so forth can look at where are these kids coming from and what is the impact on the traffic flow for the new school with 500 to 600 kids. Just keep that in mind. So I agree with all of my colleagues that are commenting about a significant concern about not having a light there. This is not my first project. We're on a main street. The state doesn't want to do it. But that doesn't mean that it won't happen. It's just we have to use data and information in order to be able to get there. And I don't think we really have any of that data and information on our side right now until the redistricting committee does its work and makes a recommendation. And all of a sudden we know that we have, 8 buses going to the new South School, of which 5 of them have to take a left-hand turn. Or we have, only 2 buses, but we have 150 cars that have to take a left-hand turn. I think the data is the only way to get the state to potentially budge at some point. And then lastly, and Craig, I think you can support me on this. If I'm wrong, please tell me. But I also know that the corner of Turnpike and Park is a future potential light in that area, over by the golf course, if you will, or the, that coming off of Turnpike. There's a lot of discussion going on there about a potential signal area up there, which we know from the signal being added at the library. Thank you to my colleagues in engineering 3 years ago now, when I came on board, that we asked for a little bit of a review of when the lights were turning red, green, and yellow in order to allow for it to flow better through downtown, specifically around 7 to 8 in the morning, which by doing that little tweak, we ended up with less issues of the buses not being able to get through. So it's not over yet, I guess is my point. Sorry for being so long-winded.
If I could just respond to that, Joe. The Park and Turnpike Street, we've been going through the TIP process with the state for several years now, in examining that intersection for a signal. They go through a process called intersection control evaluation. We've been through it 3 times now, and they come out. They perform their evaluation based on traffic and needs in the area, and 3 times they've come out with a roundabout as the preferred alternative. So if you're a town meeting member, you'll see that in this year's town meeting book, it back up because we're requesting additional funds to finish design of that. But we thought initially it was a no-brainer to put a signal there. The MassDOT's evaluation criteria, which looks at long-term costs such as electricity and cars stopped at red lights and consuming gas and so forth, that they favor roundabouts.
Also known as a rotary?
Yes, you might be more familiar with them in that fashion. But, they do have certain traffic calming implications, and, they do tend to slow traffic down. So there's recently been a road safety audit. I think it was probably about a year and a half ago with MassDOT. They did a road safety audit for the entire length of Park Street, and looked at all of those intersections, Ash Street, Park and Prospect and so forth, all the way up. And they have certain recommendations for the entire corridor. And, you know, implementing them can be a long-term problem, but they all lend towards, you know, some safety measures getting installed on that stretch. So they are recognized and as a problem, and we're looking for solutions.
Okay.
So Craig, as a town meeting member, which I know Melissa is, and a few other people on the, I'm really looking forward to this. This is the first I'm hearing about that it's going to be a roundabout with 61 articles. It's been tough to kind of go through all of this stuff yet, but I can't believe that they would think that that would be a better option for anybody that's driven by there at any time of the day. It's all backed up every which way.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think my jaw hit the floor when we were starting throwing the roundabout word out there. There's a plan that'll be in with the town meeting book for backup. And you know, honestly, at this point, MassDOT's dictating what they will fund, right? So the process is that the town pays for design and MassDOT pays for construction, right? So it's probably a $3 or $4 million project to signalize any intersection or install a roundabout. So, you know, the trade-off to go through this process is worthwhile for the town, but we have to live with their results of their analysis. So we go through their process. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the town meeting thinks about it.
Be interesting.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Craig, in their assessment, they took into account the patterns that are coming through for emergency vehicles coming from out of town and in town, correct?
Yes, yeah, they're
Because
aware.
that
Yeah.
corridor is
Yep.
very vibrant due to some of the surrounding areas losing their hospitals and other things. So, and obviously we now have the straight shot from our fire station, which is great.
Yeah.
However, it's just something that I want to make sure, because that again will impact the traffic at the peak hours for the kids. And those stoppages will be huge, and obviously emergency vehicles get the right of way. So, okay, all just things that I want to make sure are being considered. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for all that. It's I guess the positive note is all this, you might say, uncertainty as to exactly what's going to happen with the intersection is not affecting our schedule of you know, moving the project ahead at this point. As I said, we're still, you know, physically designing the intersection to handle a light, and that's kind of the optimal design, even if there isn't a light as well, for the layout of the project. And likewise, I don't believe it affects, you know, the planning board's schedule on review of the, you know, site plan review either. So at least from that aspect, we can be doing two things at once. Still finishing up the drawings and specs and getting construction started there while we still try to do what's best for that intersection. So the other major activity that the design team's engaged in is getting a set of plans together for the next milestone cost estimate, which is 90% complete, to give to both our own estimator, independent estimator through DRA, and WT Rich as the construction manager. So once again, we'll have two opinions here, and in a few weeks afterwards, they'll get together, reconcile, and we'll update and make sure we're still on budget and have good numbers to compare with when we do go out to bid. You know, for each of these individual packages, we'll have numbers to compare with as well. As part of that process, I think the next thing we wanted to just report on is we did go through a value engineering review of the project, like most projects do these days. Not that we were under any real urgency you know, because we were way over budget or anything. And as a matter of fact, you know, the last estimates were on or slightly under budget, but we still think it's good practice to get feedback from both the estimators or the contractors who are involved in this, the engineers who have opinions about, well, maybe we can do things a little bit differently and save some money and not really compromise the quality or the functionality of the project. So we did do that with the working group over a couple sessions. And of course, we had internal meetings as well among ourselves and our consultants and all. And not to go through the individually, but just to give a quick high-level summary, we did reduce the construction costs by somewhere in the vicinity of $500,000 between site items and building items. We had a list, I don't know the number, we probably started with 30 or 40 items at least, and we ended up agreeing on and accepting about 10 or 12 of them, half of them in site items, things like looking at the type of curbing, the amount of paving and planting, the type of paving, and so forth, and planting. In those reductions in the buildings, inside the building was mainly about finishes and materials. Again, relatively modest, you might say, in the overall scheme of things, but meaningful and again, things that we think are reasonable and the working group agreed ultimately. And the other thing that we did too, we took a look at what we had been calling alternates, just to review them. These are things that the common language might be to say these are nice to haves. These are things that maybe were not absolutely required, but if the budget, if the bids come in below budget and there's support for some of these, they could be added back in. We had a list of 5 of them. One of them was the rooftop area outside of the STEM room that, you know, was an extension of really the STEM classroom there. And in the end, we had priced it separately, and it was, you can see the order of magnitude there was about 100,000, a little more, to do what we needed to do for the structure and the guardrails and the roof paving material and so forth. And when we reviewed it, we kind of went back to the education plan and said, is this really an alternate, or should we really have this as part of the project? And there was strong support for having it in the project, and particularly at this value, which we think is a good value that the estimators had calculated. So we decided to eliminate it as an alternate and make it part of the base project. So that is in there. It does satisfy the education plan, as we said. And then the other 3 or 4 alternates had to do with the fields, lighting the fields, adding lights to the basketball court, and irrigating the fields. Each of those things are potentially could be considered for CPA funding. And they also, except for very limited aspects of them, they don't truly have to be bid alternates because they do involve site work. They involve trades that are so-called non-filed sub-bid trades, where the construction manager, we can ask for breakout pricing on these, and we can still make decisions as to the scope of the project collectively and get numbers in a competitive fashion for these. But we don't necessarily have to consider them as bid alternates otherwise. And we certainly can, you know, if we incorporate them in the project, we can still segregate the cost so that we could still try to apply for CPA funding for the funding of those items there too. So that's something that we'll stay in touch with and work with their schedule and continue to have conversation in that regard. So just to keep you informed, we're not really changing the scope of the project in any way at this time. We're asking for any changes. We're just keeping you updated on how we're approaching these things. But there was sort of one area that the working group, we did want to, they felt we should share it with the full building committee. If we go to the next slide, Eric. One of the material changes or substitutions that was proposed had to do with the stone-like material that we're using at the base of the building in certain areas, and particularly at that front wall where the sign Stoughton Elementary School is. And I know it's pretty small in this rendering, but where the gray material is, that's stone-like material there at the front entrance. And one of the value engineering suggestions was, could we substitute a masonry material, a more unitized concrete masonry unit, CMU as it's called, that has kind of a rough face to it, split face, but it's laid up, in courses like masonry, 8-inch by 16-inch units in horizontal coursing, in lieu of the stone-like material. And if you go to the next slide, I think you can see the difference a little more particularly of what we're talking about. On the left is what we had in the design originally. The material is actually not truly stone, it's a calcium silicate, sort of type of stone, but you can see it's a variety of shapes and a variety of colors that looks more like natural stone. And on the right is what the substitute would be, is the textured split face concrete masonry. And also at the base of this stone material, we did have one course of real granite material, so actual stone, because that functions better in contact with the earth and with water than these other materials. So so we wanted to share that with you. I think there may be one more picture of the stone too, so you can see the texture of it and how it's laid up. And the design strategy here was that if you were to walk out on the site today, there are some stone outcroppings on the site. This was kind of our, way of continuing that feeling in the building that this is a school in the woods. These are, the wood on the inside of the building that we're using for structure is partly that recall, but also the stone material on the face of the building and a few strategic areas is another way to recall that. But the working group felt like, they didn't quite come to consensus, and they thought we ought to have a discussion with the entire group here. The value of this, going back to it, is somewhere around $150,000, I think. They're the numbers. Yeah, one's 110, one's 50 for the granite at the base, and the change, if we were to change from the stone material to the CMU, the concrete masonry units there. So I wanted to introduce it that way and just hear what people had to say. I see some people have their hands raised already. Leo, you want to go first, and then TJ?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I mean, aesthetically, obviously the stone looks a lot nicer than the block, but what's the life expectancy of the block compared to the stone? And
I think the stone
durability
is actually a denser material than the split face, but they're both, being masonry materials, they're, long lasting in that regard. I don't think there's, quantifiable difference there in terms of longevity that we'd be concerned about necessarily.
There has to be some kind of a difference between the two components. And
well, block
is one going to be 20 years?
Block,
no, I
there's
know,
less
but like
material there, and it's laid up in more straightforward coursing. So between the material, it is, basically concrete, whereas the stone-like material is a different chemical makeup, so it's a little more expensive material. So that's where the difference comes from.
Right, but you're going to get 25 more years out of that, or 15 more years. I mean, there has to be some kind of facts to base that up before you're going to have a problem. Does it have to be retucked? Does it have to be cleaned up like brick does every 20 years.
The mortar joints repointed every now and then. Perhaps they'd be more noticeable or more an issue with the block than with the stone in that sense too. But okay. TJ?
Thanks, Carl. Not a question, just a comment, because I think you stated the discussion amongst the working group people pretty accurately. We couldn't reach consensus. And I put my hand in early to get my side out. So this is the front face of the building. This is the dominant view. This is when people think of whatever it's going to be called elementary school, this is what they'll think of. And there are places where we can concede on aesthetics. Perhaps this, in my mind, is absolutely not the place we want to concede on aesthetics. I'm stating my position only. Aesthetics matter, and particularly with the front entrance of this building, the dominant view of this building, and we already value engineered this particular wall down from granite to calcium silicate. I'm right with that, aren't I, Carl?
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, and now the option is to downgrade one step further to CMU. And I will say, by the way, in the spirit of equal time and fairness, Joel Wolk, if he were here, would speak up in favor of CMU, and he would direct you to the new fire station where they did use CMU. But I just feel so strongly that this has to be a stone, a natural-looking stone front view, and the aesthetics on this particular wall, I'll stand on my head upside down and backwards, speaking up in favor of this. That's all I could go overboard, but thanks, Carl.
Thanks, TJ. Angel, Eric, could you go to the next slide too? I think it's a better sort of comparison for folks to see.
I just looked it up while you guys were talking for Leo's question on which is more durable, how much longer. And basically the consensus that I'm finding is that the calcium silicate it doesn't have the shrinkage that concrete has. So you end up with a more durable wall. It is more like stone. It will probably outlast your CMU. By how much is, not really quantifiable because both are very long lasting materials. But if that's something that you're looking to sort of go up against, that is what I have uncovered.
Other thoughts?
Carl, Joe B here. Listen, I think it's such an important decision to make sure that we have two things come out of the decision. Number one is the best long-term decision. But to TJ's point, it needs to look right on day one. I think that's a huge component of a building. And it's an important decision. It may sound like not an important decision, but when you drive into the building and you're looking at the facade of that building, the first piece that you see, you want to be A, wowed that your tax dollars were spent correctly, and B, internally, we want to know that it has a long-term positive implication.
Thanks, Joe. Diane?
Sorry, I was muted. When we did the renderings of these buildings, of this building, was the calcium, was that the one that was literally on the picture itself?
Yes, yes.
Well, then that would get my vote, just like Joe said too. I think it would kind of discourage a few people from going up and looking and saying, gee, I thought it was supposed to be, look like this and now it's not, so.
Yeah. In fact, the photograph there on the left is pretty much the tone that we rendered it, that gray with some buff, and because that's more akin to the stone that outcroppings that we've seen on the site. Yep. Lynn?
I don't have anything new to add, but I would support the previous three speakers. I think they're absolutely right about the effect it has on people. And it's such a big project. Why not go big at this point?
Okay. And like I say, just to reiterate too, we will be getting a new budget estimate soon, but in the context of where we're at, we are under budget right now. So it's not as though we need to look for, avenues to save 50,000 or 100,000. We always want to be prudent, we understand, but we're not in that position that we have to cut something else then if we keep this in or something like that. So just wanted to point that out. But hearing nothing, I think we'll proceed with this, and we appreciate people weighing in on it. Thanks.
I was just going to ask TJ, with the seemingly somewhat unanimous decision, do we need a formal vote on that, or are we good to go?
I was gonna ask the same thing. I guess if Carl wants a vote, we could take a vote, but.
No, we prefer just the opposite, TJ. It's a slippery slope to start voting on aesthetics. Frankly, we prefer to do things by consensus and that sort of thing, if we can, most all the time. Thank you.
Great.
So one other bit of business tonight too that we wanted to bring up we mentioned last time about proprietary items. So we can go to those. And again, just to fill you in, public bidding in Massachusetts, public construction rather, in public bidding requires that in general, we write open specs where, anyone who meets the performance criteria can bid on a product. But there are exceptions that if an owner, for very, specific reasons, reasonable, I forget the exact legal language they use, but supportable, reasonable rationale can, for certain items, take a vote to make certain products be proprietary, meaning that not only is the basis of design around a certain product, but that specific product is really what the owner wants. And so there are a few of those in this project, as there have been on other projects. We had a couple at the high school, the library had some, the fire station recently had some of the same sort of nature. So the basic rationale here, as you can see in each of these, is that they're proprietary in order to match an established standard that the town has, and that would provide uniformity in design and operation and maintenance. I'm sorry, I missed that chat, Leo. What was that? Was that about one of these?
He had to leave the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw alarm, because that's one of the proprietary items is about alarms. But, the rationale for each of these products rather is basically the same. And what we need to do collectively as a building committee is, in this case, our understanding is it's actually the select board that ultimately has to vote as an elected body to allow us to write proprietary specifications for these. But the way we could word it for them is that the building committee recommends that these, in this case, 5 items, be made proprietary for the reason as we stated. And we can write out the more official language for the select board when the time comes to vote on it. But basically, we conferred with the school department, with Dennis in particular, on these products, but also looked at the fire station and library too, as to things that they had and the reasons. And so you can see there's the fire alarm communication device that ties in the building to the fire station. Obviously, there has some value for that to be uniform with other buildings in town. The technology that has to do with security and access control, again, very valid, reasonable reason that should be uniform with other town buildings. So those are the products named there, which include cameras as well as access control. And then the integrated I forget what IP is, integrated protocol TV. I forget now the IPTV, but again, that's like a closed circuit TV kind of among the school system, school district. So it of course, again, not only wants to tie in, but just to be uniform in operation and in maintenance and so forth, not just function, wants to be the same brand as well. So those are the 5 products. And unless there are questions individually, I think we could just take a vote collectively to say that, you know, you as a building committee recommend these 5 items be brought forth to the select board for their vote to allow the design team to write proprietary specifications. So I see Diane has a question. Go ahead, Diane. You're muted. Sorry, Diane.
God, and the TV is on behind me, so I try and keep it down.
Okay.
My question is more for Dennis. Dennis, you've already talked to the IT guys about these particular systems, correct?
Yes, they were part of the meeting when we went over this. Tony was part of that meeting as well. So
Okay. And are they all on board with these particular, going to be compatible with everything else we have?
yes, it is exactly
Okay.
everything was selected is to mimic what currently we have in town and what we have at the rest of the schools as well. So everything aligns perfectly with one another.
Okay. Thanks, Carl.
Okay, any other questions?
No, is there a motion to present the 5 items listed on the slide that Carl mentioned before the selectmen for approval?
So
as
moved.
proprietary items?
So moved by Etta.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. I'll run down the roll. Dr. Byada,
Aye.
Joe Buckley,
Aye.
Fran Brutinetti, Tom Coulter, Steve Cavey, Jillian DeStefano,
Aye.
Diane Dolan,
Aye.
Jake Dorr,
Aye.
Leo Fay,
He had to leave.
oh, sorry, Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Craig Horsfall,
Aye.
Lynn Jordan,
Aye.
Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
Juliet Miller, Katie Monahan,
Aye.
Anne Marie Raymond, TJ Recupero votes aye, Dennis Rego,
Aye.
Mark Tisdale, Joe Wolf, Pat Manikowski. Julie, are you here?
You got 12 votes.
Yeah, well, list Julie is not voting.
She's there, but having trouble audio, it looks like.
No worries.
Give us a thumbs up.
Carl, anything more?
Just one last item, just to let you know, kind of related to proprietary items that you may wonder, for instance, why aren't locks on here? You would think locks are, you know, also going to be proprietary to be common. But the way it's controlled is that the school actually buys the cores that do match the rest of the town, and they get inserted into the locks that are provided. The locks are kind of interchangeable in that sense that you can change out the core. So on the last page, just a few other items that are not technically part of the construction, but may end up being proprietary too, like radios, equipment, you know, that's bought, or the locks. And what else on that last slide, Eric? If you just want to go to that, just to close it out. Nothing that requires a vote. Oh, the phone system too, the actual phone instruments and system, which again is, you know, will be standardized, but doesn't require a vote at this time, just to let you know that those are out there too. So otherwise I'll set then, TJ. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for your feedback.
On the proprietary items, I know that I heard it mentioned that there's no urgency to get those in front of the selectmen immediately, but so the select board, there's an election first Tuesday in April. It's going to be at least one new member. And 3 weeks later, the town gets into town meeting where the select board will not be meeting, I don't think. But their agenda will likely be jammed up. So just through June now, and the next 3 or 4 weeks is probably the most open their agenda will be. And then I would assume, you know, as town meeting starts to whittle down on its articles, they'll open up again. Just timing wise. So, and anything I can do to get that in front of the select board, please let me know.
Thanks, TJ.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So back to the agenda. So we took care of value engineering list, community outreach.
All right, so the community outreach group met last week, had some good discussion. From that meeting, the important task was to determine the next public forum. That is going to be on March 26th, which is a couple Thursdays from now. I did send out a Teams invitation, so that'll actually be a lunchtime forum, which is the group decided that's where we've had the most success in the past. The goal of the next forum is not only to update the community on the project and the budget, but also more importantly to, you know, present the upcoming schedule, some of the activities that we will be doing in the summer. So we really want to engage the local community, and I think we're thinking about sending out some notices to maybe a local abutters list to hopefully attract some of those, or at least inform some of those households that this meeting will be happening on the 26th. So that'll be coming up, and we'll have to meet and plan for that forum. The outreach group will continue to meet in April. I think we have another meeting scheduled for the beginning of April, where they will discuss some of the next few things, engaging the public, including things such as the groundbreaking ceremony. So that's something they'll discuss at the next meeting. And I guess another item discussed was the project sign, which will go up as per the discussion at the last SBC meeting. We'll have that up by April 1st before the summer enabling work and tree clearing starts. So in April. So we're working on that. DRA did send out a design that was approved by the MSBA, which we sent to them, and WT Rich is working on that now. So all good stuff there. Any questions regarding community outreach or from the members of the outreach group? DJ, do you have something?
I do, Eric. I know we also talked about some type of handout that we could actually give to the town meeting members, maybe at the organizational meeting, which, I mean, that if you want to get the word across town, that would be the best way to go.
Thanks, Diane. And that's on that's April 30 meeting?
Oh,
if I remember
it's the
correctly?
Thursday before. I
Yes.
believe it is the 30th. Yes.
April 30th.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, we can talk about that. I'm sure we can put something together. Joe?
Yeah, just real quick, thanks. Any type of public relations that goes out with that should include these. This is fantastic. Thank you for doing this.
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody's opened them up yet, but these are the QR codes for the interactive design map.
Mhm.
And they're on a computer especially. I've done it while we've been meeting. I've done it on the phone and it's okay, but on an actual computer, it's just really good stuff. And at minimum, if we can do a marketing or a public relations that says, hey, this is meeting's taking place, and then maybe even just speak to a few of these things by putting it on the other side. This is very well done. Thank you for doing it.
Great. And we do have that on the dashboard, so I'll make sure that stays in the dashboard. That dashboard can be, that's a good document to share with the community. I think it covers most of the bases, so
Mhm.
use that.
Yeah, I plan to have Jeff as part of our upcoming newsletter, probably use these design map on a superintendent's newsletter update about the building, because it's just easy, right? You can use your phone or whatever and just go to it and you get a little bit of a piece of information. And I think that's what the public is looking for. Just continue to give us more information about what's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Melissa?
I think one of the things that we definitely need, and we did talk about this, is just to talk about that we're under budget. I know that was mentioned earlier today, that
Mhm.
we're under budget, and then if there's been any borrowing, just confirmation from the treasurer's office, that solid information, because people are going to want to note that up to date, and they're going to hold on to that. So that's just really important. I know we talked a little bit about that. And then I know the sign was approved by MSBA, and it kind of was moving along quickly so that it was there for April 1st. And last we talked, there was I know this, I'm harping on this, but I think we do on Park Street need to say that it's the entrance to the school, because the school is set back in the woods. So I'm just fearful that people ask all the time, where exactly is the school? Where is this? Because it's in like a more wooded area, that we need to be clear to them that it's not going to be a facade off of Park Street that you're going to look at.
Mhm.
I don't want to fall into that trap, because people will be like, wait a minute, I think that's it. So I know Jake had some good ideas around that about, maybe doing something academically that was kind of, I forget how he phrased it at the time, but I think it's just important to make that delineation, so people are aware and people get more of an understanding of where exactly this is taking place. But otherwise, it's great.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything on community outreach? Katie?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this so much falls under the community outreach or maybe as the part of the school committee update that's the next thing in the agenda, but I was wondering if we might be able to get an update on how the discussions surrounding the name of the new school, if possible.
TJ, I can
Joe?
speak to that.
Yeah,
I can
please do.
speak to that. So at the last school committee meeting, I presented basically the history of how the school committee in the past, most recently the Wilkins, plus internal with the high school project, i.e. The auditorium named after Ron Christensen, the school committee room named after Dr. Murray, and how those had already been in place. And that was established by a prior school committee going back to about 2019. And policy is actually from 2019. They received a copy of that policy. I believe the school committee will be acting on this sometime in the next, I would say, April into May. I don't want to speak for them because it's their decision, but there is a process for a petitioning of a naming, and then there's which they can accept or not. And there's also the process where the school committee can make a decision, for example, to keep it as the South Elementary School, versus petitioning for the purposes of naming it after someone. I've given them my view of it. I'm happy to do that with this committee if you'd like. But I am no longer the superintendent as of July 1st, so that will belong to other folks to make that decision.
I just was wondering if I could just provide my opinion for what it's worth. I don't have any qualms about, you know, ultimately how it's named. I just thought that it might be important for me to share that I had heard that there had been discussions about it maintaining the South School name, and I'm just suggesting that perhaps we investigate, or the school committee investigate, other options for names, just so that it continues to be as inclusive as possible, because there will be a lot of students that are going to be feeding into that school that are not currently South School students. And there are going to be a lot of staff that will be joining that staff that are not currently South School staff. And I just want to make sure that we don't run into a situation where people are not feeling like that they're guests, so to speak. And I've mentioned this before, but I just wanted to share my opinion so that perhaps that could get shared at a school committee meeting if appropriate.
Yeah, I think, Katie, to your point, I think that the two perspectives of what you just said are going on. There's a very strong perspective from the South School of keeping it South. There's a very strong perspective of being more inclusive of the process. And I think the committee is very open to that process. And I'll defer because I believe Jillian just raised her hand as well.
Yeah, so as for the policy, I know that's on our next school committee meeting agenda to discuss the policy on it, which, you know, I won't go into discussion on that because it's on the next agenda for it. But I think our overall feeling so far, like the last time we discussed this, was to keep it the South School, just because it's located in the south part of Stoughton, as well as, you know, it's hard to name a school after a person. I'm open, honestly, to, you know, any other suggestions. So that might be something we just open up for people to discuss and give us some different options. And it's a good community engagement as well for people to come and suggest different names that I'm certainly open to.
Sandra, did you have something?
I did. Thank you, TJ. So I do have an opinion on this. I think as a building committee, that's not our remit to really, and I'd feel a bit more comfortable not discussing the naming of a building, only because that is the remit of the school committee, and there is a written policy that the public should follow if they would wish to go down that avenue. I will just go back 2019 when it was the high school. The school committee didn't have any voting or say in what was named within the high school building. That was, I believe the building committee talked about it, TJ, right? But it wasn't a school committee voting. School committee's remit was more naming of the buildings, anything outside. So I just think that we have business to tend to here, and it's not renaming of the building. And if, you know, I respect where Ms. DeStefano is coming from, I think the right forum would be at a school committee meeting.
Diane, did you have something?
I did, and I agree with Sandra. This really is not, and actually my question might be outside the scope of what we're doing here, but I think a lot of people in my district, which is Sandra's as well, is curious as to what the Wilkins School is going to be called when it changes. Will it be still the Jones Preschool? Will it just say district office? Will the Wilkins name go away? I guess that's a question for Joe.
Yeah, so that is all under the purview of the school committee, not the superintendent. We have a history that looks at not necessarily a building change, but sections of a building, as I mentioned earlier, where there was a school committee room that was named after a former superintendent, and then that school committee at the time said, we're going to go through this process. I presented those facts to the school committee recently, gave them all the different policies. I gave them the policy, and I have a file of stuff that I've gone through, going all the way back to the naming of the DAR and the Hanson. It is a petition process of the school committee if you are utilizing a name. So in other words, if you want to call it the, you know, TJ Recupero Elementary School, That means somebody's got to take a petition out for that. They've got to get signatures, X number of signatures, present that to the school committee, and it's still a school committee decision. So I think to Sandra's point, any building currently or new, changing of rooms or extra all belong at the school committee level, and that's where the debate and discussion would take place in the process. It's, you know, the Jones School was never a preschool until it became a preschool. It was an actual elementary school. I went to school there. It then became the preschool. So there's nothing to stopping that from doing the same thing at the Wilkins, for example. I'm only using that as an example. So that'll be all under the purview of the school committee. I don't see, well, look, I'll just leave it under the purview of the school committee.
Jake?
Sorry. I don't have a comment on the name. I actually wanted to circle back to Melissa Lynch's point for a second. I really do, because we kind of like jumped ahead there for a second. I do think we have an opportunity with that kind of big forest frontage area where the entrance to the building project will be, to do some really cool, like, you know, playful design related to the fact that it is an elementary school and not a high school, right? Like, this is a unique opportunity to do some things like it's 250 feet from the main entrance of the building. Like, there's opportunities there that I really am hopeful that, you know, like Alex with WT Rich and Eric and people might be open to kind of talking about those things. I think it would be kind of fun. It is an elementary school. I really hope we can lean into that idea. And that when people do drive by, whether they're from the south side of town or from the Wilkins district or the Daw district, they kind of can point that out. And so as you kind of are in that area, you can see, well, it's going to be back there. Because realistically, you're not going to be able to see that building from the street itself. So that's just my 2 cents. Yeah, appreciate it.
Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I didn't mean to open a can of worms with the name. It had come up when we were having our outreach conversations. I completely respect the school committee. I just wanted to share my opinion. I totally did not intend to open a can of worms. I apologize.
No, not at all. Actually, I was going to open it up myself, but I'll honor what Sandra said and not speak about it at this meeting. I have more thoughts on what it shouldn't be than what it should be, but I do have a question to Dr. Baeta. Has anyone from the Historical Society, or have they been consulted about any suggestions or?
No. So TJ, I think one of the things, my history with this topic, and I've had a couple of situations with this in a couple of districts, the naming process of schools is a very deliberate, but yet conscientious discussion. And I'll give you an example. The Wilkins Elementary School is I believe one example of someone who had served the community, was established, had been was deceased. The last two elementary schools that were named after people that were still with us, both the Dar and the Hanson, which led to some internal discussions. I'm not questioning the idea that they were named after that. I'm just saying the whole process. Typically, a space in a building is named after a process to the school committee about, hey, that room, you know, that person served in the library as the librarian for 30 years, 35 years. You name it afterwards, that type of thing. When it comes to naming of a building, the process has been, it's a long-winded approach, sorry, TJ. The process has been, is there a flavor out there for naming it after someone? And if so, what is that process? The school committee under policy has that process in written form from 2019. Very clear, very concise, very deliberate. So if there is a process that people want to do that, it would literally start with those parties that would bring that forward. And then it's decided upon yes or no. What you don't want to do, that's very interesting about the school, about the South, and I'm only saying this as an opinion of the superintendent, not as a fact, although it is fact. It's the only remaining elementary school in town that is just named for the part of town. The West was the West, the North was the North, the Chemung was named after the hill. The first school, elementary-wise, named after somebody was the Gibbons, and that was from day one. It was named the Gibbons. So everything else has been through the history. So all of this, it's a great discussion and debate, but it's all under the purview of the school committee. It's not even under my purview as superintendent. And so, no, I don't think anybody on the school committee or myself has said that. I will tell you, I just told somebody else this. When the time comes, one of the things that I am a huge supporter of, take it for whatever it is, just as Joe being Joe, I'm a huge supporter of veterans. I believe veterans are, especially those that either served our country and or died for our country or died for our country. But that's all under the purview of the school committee. It's not under the purview of the superintendent or the building committee. But I do agree to Jake's point, Melissa's point. We need to get something out there at some point in the next few months that says future home of whatever it may be, new school, new elementary school, if that's what we want to start with, or actually a formal name.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody else? We're still on the topic of public outreach, and I think we kind of rolled it into new business also, but so any other new business items?
Yeah, I have one, TJ.
Sure, please, Joe.
So I did have the just an update on just giving people an update on the school committee naming of the school. I'm going to bring up a topic that may come across a little sore, and I don't want it to be, and that is the number of people on this committee. In order to hold a quorum, the number of people that we need this is the biggest working committee I've ever seen for a building committee. I'm just putting it out there that at some point it could be difficult to have quorums, especially as this committee has to do its working meeting. And so, you know, if people aren't going to be attending, I myself, for example, should not be replaced. I'm leaving June 30th. I should not be replaced. The superintendent-elect is on the committee as already, so we don't need to have two of us on here. And we did it for the right reasons with Julie, so please don't take that as an insult. But I think the number of people on this committee is way too big. And as things get busy and bills have to be paid, I hope that the committee can become a little smaller. That's all. Or a process for doing that could become a little smaller.
Already in the works, Joe.
That's the reason why you're TJ Recupero, the chair of the committee.
It's on the town manager's desk. So the concept that I don't mind sharing is I suggested to the town manager that there are certain positions that do a heck of a lot of work for the committee, just not at the meetings. For example, we heard the financial subcommittee meeting, and Anne Marie Raymond attends all of those and reviews all of the invoices. And she is technically a member of the committee. And the idea was that what she's doing now would assist the committee as a member. I asked the town manager if he would you can have, per MSBA rules, you can have voting and non-voting or ex officio members. So I asked the town manager if he would make this position like that an ex officio member so that they would not count against the quorum. And I have actually I heard back by text, and I won't share the text with the committee, but that's in front of his desk. He has to submit the form to MSBA for approval. And hopefully by next meeting, we'll have that issue resolved. Still going to be a pretty big committee, but we won't have quorum issues anymore. That was my thought. So.
Sorry, TJ,
Anything
for
else?
bringing it up, but thank you
Yeah,
for
no,
your
not at all,
leadership
Joe.
on that.
No, I'm glad you brought it up because it's been something that we've had a lot of discussions offline in, individually about sort of more griping than anything else about how, it's unwieldy to have a committee this large and to meet a quorum requirement. So anybody else have any new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to stay on
So
for a little,
moved.
I'd like to stay on for a little while longer. Anybody want to stay on?
Motion by Jake, second by Joe Baeta.
Yes.
Great. I'll run down the roll. Dr. Baeta,
Aye.
Joseph Buckley,
Aye.
Fran Brunitti, Tom Coulter, Steve Cavey, Jillian DeStefano,
Aye.
Diane Dolan, Jake,
Sorry, I was muted.
Jake Dorr,
Aye.
Leo Fay, Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Craig Horsfall,
Aye.
Lynn Jordan,
Aye.
Melissa Lynch,
Hi.
Juliet Miller, Katie Monahan,
Aye.
TJ Recupero votes aye, Dennis Rego.
Aye.
Dennis, you were pretty quiet this meeting. Mark Tisdale, Joe Wolf, and Pat Yanikowski. Thank you all. See you next month.